I'm Francis Dearnley, and this is Ukraine, the latest. Today, as Ukraine suffers the largest air attack of the war, killing 4 and setting dozens of buildings on fire in Kyiv, including the main seat of government, we assess the response from world leaders. Then, in a special segment to mark the 1-year anniversary of his passing, we hear new interviews recorded by Ukraine the Latest's creator, David Knowles, and discuss 2 fundraisers launched in his memory.
Bravery takes you through the most unimaginable hardships to finally reward you with victory.
Russia does not want peace.
Erstens, wir verteidigen mit unserer Hilfe für die Ukraine auch unsere Freiheit und unsere europäischen Werte.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in 1 day, 24 hours.
We are with you, not just today or tomorrow, but for 100 years.
Nous ne pouvons pas, comme Européens, laisser gagner la Russie en Ukraine.
Nobody's going to break us. We're strong. We're Ukrainians.
It's Monday, the 8th of September, 3 years and 198 days since the full-scale invasion began. And today, dialing in from the Ukraine Freedom Summit in London, I'm joined by our Associate Editor of Defence, Dominic Nicholls. Later, you'll hear our narrative podcast producer, Adélie Pojzman-Pontay, share how the recordings of David's you're about to hear came about and why we left them deliberately unpolished. But first, over to Dom for the latest in the military realm.
The latest record mass drone and missile attack by Russia on cities across Ukraine occurred overnight Saturday, Sunday. Killed 5 people, including a woman and her newborn child in Kyiv, in the Svatochinsky district just west of the city centre, injured 44 others in the city. But as I say, that was one part of the mass attack across the country. Attacks elsewhere and in Kyiv took the total almost double those figures. Now, 8 regions, we are told, of Ukraine were hit, as well as the city of Kyiv. Multiple residential buildings and civilian infrastructure were hit. It caused power outages in a number of areas. The Cabinet of Ministers building in central Kyiv was hit, the first time the main government building has been struck since the start of the full-scale invasion. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia had launched 810 Shahed-type drones, which makes it the largest such attack since February 2022. 13 cruise and ballistic missiles were also launched. 54 drones and 9 missiles managed to get through Ukrainian air defense in 33 locations across the country. A pregnant woman injured in the Russian attack gave birth to a son after being transferred to Kyiv City Clinical Hospital, where she remains, we are told, in extremely serious condition. This comes from public broadcaster Suspilna, citing doctors at the hospital. The woman, we were told, was urgently induced into labour. Doctors are now fighting to save the newborn's life. The head of Kyiv City Administration's health department was speaking to Suspilna, reporting there by the Kyiv Independent. Now, President Zelensky said such killings, especially now when genuine diplomacy could have started long ago, are deliberate crimes that only prolong the war. Washington has repeatedly warned that sanctions will follow if talks are refused. We must fully implement all agreements made in Paris. Now, President Zelensky's reference there to Paris was that meeting last Thursday of the Coalition of the Willing, the British and French-led Coalition of the Willing, meeting in Paris, as well as French President Emmanuel Macron. There was, I think we remember, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, Friedrich Merz was there, Keir Starmer from Britain, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. I think Mark Rutte was also there, NATO Secretary General, on his way, or just after, visiting Prague, where I was at that defence summit last week. Also had US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Now, President Macron said, as you'll remember, reported last week, 26 states now formally agreed to form that reassurance force as part of any security guarantees for post-war Ukraine. Anyway, back into the country, and aside from Kyiv, explosions were heard in various cities across the country, including Odessa, Kremenchuk, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Kryvyi and Zaporizhia. 3 waves of attacks seem to have occurred in the early hours of Sunday morning, around about 03:30, another one at 6 o'clock and at 07:45. So you can imagine what's happening on the ground after each of those attacks. There are first responders trying to save life and tend to the injured, and there's also people trying to look after their loved ones and clear up and move to safety. So I don't think it's any coincidence at all that Russia launched 3 waves of attack with those sort of spacings. The Polish Air Force had to scramble fighter jets to protect this country's airspace, they said early in the morning. And then Ombre Intelligence, the global risk management firm, said that Russian forces had conducted a drone and missile attack on the port of Odessa as part of those early Sunday morning attacks. The Ukrainian Navy claimed to have intercepted 7 Russian drones during that attack, but authorities later said that 3 civilians had been injured after damage was caused to residential buildings, a warehouse and rail infrastructure in the city. Thought to be no damage to any merchant vessels actually alongside Odessa at the time. No casualties either between either crew or port workers. Otherwise, though, on the ground, minimal movement, as I say regularly. There's a little bit of Russian advance to the east of Liman and continued pressure on the Oblast border, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast border with Zaporizhia and Donetsk. Russian forces seem to be massing to the northeast of Pokrovsk in the Donbass. We know Putin wants to try to take control of the whole of the Donbass by the year's end to show, to show his power base that there is some sort of progress, or to show that this much vaunted Russian summer offensive has achieved something, but no further push there as yet. A couple of other stories, Francis. Ukrainian police on Saturday said that a Russian drone had dropped leaflets in the form of 100 hryvnia bills. So 100 hryvnia is about $2.50, but dropped these bills in the northeastern city of Chernihiv. Chernihiv is about 80 k's from the Russian border. These leaflets dropped by drone were urging local residents to collaborate with Russian forces. They offered real money in exchange for coordinates to help Russia target Ukrainian forces. And in a statement, the police warned citizens about criminal liability for disseminating information about the location and movement of the Ukrainian armed forces. But if you've seen any of these leaflets, please do let us know. It'd be very interesting to have a look at them. Now, inside Russia, and Ukraine's long-range attacks continued. Ukraine's general staff said on Sunday their forces had struck the Ilsky oil refinery. That's about 500 kilometers from Ukraine in Russia's Krasnodar Krai region. And they've also hit the 8N oil pipeline control station in Bryansk Oblast. Now, that one is thought to be the one that also takes the oil down into Slovakia and Hungary, the one that Mr. Orban and Mr. Fico made such a song and dance over, although Mr. Fico seems to have changed his tune last week. But the Ukrainian long-range strikes do seem to be continuing and having the desired effect. A couple more, though. Nearly 60% of the weapons used on the front line are produced in Ukraine, President Zelensky said in his Saturday evening address. He gives a daily address, and on Saturday he gave that figure. Now, it's interesting he uses the phrase front line because it begs the question, well, what about these long-range weapons and air defense and so on and so forth? But it's still, in and of itself, quite a startling statistic that Ukraine is slowly achieving strategic autonomy in many weapon systems. Vadim Skibitsky, the deputy head of Ukraine's military intelligence, chap I interviewed in Kyiv, was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. Anyway, he gave an interview. He said that Russia is expected to manufacture close to 2,500 high-precision missiles this year, spanning cruise, ballistic and hypersonic classes. Now, he was giving an interview to Ukrinform. It was published yesterday on Sunday. He said, as well as those missiles, Russia plans to build 57 combat aircraft, nearly 250 T-90M tanks, and over 1,000 BTR-3 and BTR-82A armoured personnel carrier this year, alongside 365 artillery systems. They are fairly sophisticated T-90s, BTR-3, BTR-82, as well as the combat aircraft. They are sophisticated stuff. If Russia is able to produce those, that does speak of a certain depth, I should say, in their defence industrial complex. And just to bring us back up to date, Francis, in the last 24 hours, so Sunday night, Monday morning, 142 Shahed-type attack decoy drones were fired at Ukraine. Air defences brought down 112, but 26 still managed to get through and hit 7 locations across the country. 6 people were killed, mostly in Donetsk Oblast, and many more injured.
Well, thanks, Dom. In his evening address in the wake of that record-breaking mass strike of over 800 drones, President Zelensky also said Ukraine expects a strong response from its international partners, particularly the United States. Clearly, Russia is trying to inflict pain on Ukraine with even more brazen attacks, he said. This is a clear sign Putin is testing the world, whether they will accept or tolerate this. Other leaders were swift to rally behind him. France's Emmanuel Macron said Russia has once again rained down hundreds of drones and a dozen missiles on Ukraine, striking indiscriminately, including residential areas and the seat of government. Together with Ukraine and our partners, we stand for peace. Russia, meanwhile, is locking itself ever deeper into the logic of war and terror. By Ukraine's side, we will continue to do everything to ensure that a just and lasting peace prevails. He was followed by Poland's Donald Tusk, who added, "The Russian attack on Kyiv's government building shows again that the continued delaying of a strong reaction against Putin and the attempts to appease him make no sense. The US and Europe must, together, force Russia to accept an immediate ceasefire. We have all the instruments." Now, it is worth noting that 2 drones crashed in eastern Poland over the weekend. That does occasionally happen, but it underscores that this war is not as strictly contained as many imagine. A stray missile used to be a front-page story. No longer. But what will the meaningful political response be? When asked yesterday, President Trump said, and all the usual caveats apply, that he is ready to begin a new phase of sanctions against Russia and plans to speak with Putin very soon. He confirmed European leaders will visit the US early this week to discuss the proposed peace deal. We don't know exactly who he means, but our Brussels correspondent Joe Barnes clocked that Dan Jorgensen, the EU's Energy Commissioner, and David O'Sullivan, its sanctions envoy, are leading an EU delegation to Washington this week to coordinate sanctions. So it may be that he was referring to those, and if so, it gives an extra weight to what they'll be discussing, perhaps. Now, Zelensky also said another interesting thing on Saturday, that security guarantees for Ukraine must be implemented immediately, not after a peace deal. To quote him directly, "The first step to ending any war is a ceasefire. If pressure increases, not decreases, if there are security guarantees and sanctions, this will naturally push Putin in the right direction. Guarantees must be implemented without waiting for the end of the fighting." Now, bear in mind the terms ceasefire and peace deal are often used indiscriminately, yet they also carry distinct meanings, the former referring simply to a halt in the fighting, the latter to a negotiated settlement that follows. Zelensky's precise intent here isn't clear, but many would contend that the only way this war could be brought to a swift conclusion is through decisive action now, action that forces Russia to reconsider its position. Zelensky also rebutted Putin's invitation to come to Moscow. He can come to Kyiv, Zelensky said in an interview with ABC. "I can't go to Moscow when my country is under missiles, under attack each day. I can't go to the capital of this terrorist." Now, after that claim over the weekend that nearly 60% of the weapons used on the front line are produced in Ukraine, Zelensky also confirmed Kyiv has launched its first line of joint drone production in Denmark and plans to develop further programs in other European countries. It follows that landmark defence agreement in July between the 2 countries. Now, one more from me before we get to the heart of today's episode. Domestically, there continue to be tensions over bills going through the Ukrainian parliament. As the Kyiv Independent reports today, hundreds of demonstrators gathered in Independence Square to protest parliamentary bills that would impose tougher criminal penalties on soldiers for disobedience. "Service is not slavery," the crowd chanted. The protests target 2 bills under consideration in Ukraine's parliament. One, which parliament passed in the first reading last week, effectively reinstates criminal liability for soldiers using illegal weapons. The other increases liability for military personnel who disobey orders. It is currently up for consideration. Now, protesters held signs that read, "Repression is not discipline. We must protect those who protect us," among others. They called on the government to vote down the 2 laws, as well as establish clear terms of military service and appoint a military ombudsman. As we've discussed many times, a persistent source of tension within Ukrainian society lies in balancing the need for discipline and top-down command structures with the desire to preserve the innovative bottom-up initiatives and, one might say, mentality. And that tension is particularly evident on the front lines, where improvised weapons and drone kits play an important role against the backdrop of concerns by the government over their control over those soldiers and fears about troops going AWOL. But reflecting on Ukraine's domestic situation brings us to the core of today. And as Dom mentioned earlier, it is an emotional day for us, as we know it is for many of you. A year ago today, the creator of this podcast, David Knowles, passed away suddenly from a cardiac arrest. Thousands of you wrote in to express your own sense of loss, many of you saying it was like losing a friend or even a member of your own family. We remain so grateful to everyone who supported us during that time and who continue today to write in about him and what he meant to you. David was committed to ensuring the war was always treated as seriously from the first day to the 1,000th and beyond. And lest we forget, the worst bombardment on Ukraine was just this weekend. We are proud to have not missed a day's reporting since his passing. And it is a testament to him that in the past 12 months, he was posthumously honoured with the Public Service Journalism Award here in Britain, and Ukraine the Latest won News Podcast of the Year at the Press Awards and Best Use of Audio at the Digital Publishing Awards. It's in his memory we continue to expand the podcast. We've got no plans to stop. We all know how thrilled he would have been about the daily translated editions we produce using AI to retain our voices. He was very passionate about ensuring that people had access to accurate information, whatever language they spoke. When he died, we were left with an archive of recordings for several projects he was working on, many of which were recorded with Adélie in Ukraine in February 2024. Some of them we played over Christmas, and now, a year since his death, we're delighted to be able to share not just one, but several new military documentaries from David this month. But before you hear the first, David's family wanted to mark the anniversary by fundraising in his memory. And if you feel able to spare something, there are two charities you can donate to, which we'll link to in the episode description. One is KHARPP, spelled KHARPP, the UK registered charity working in Ukraine, whose co-founder, Ada Wordsworth, you'll have heard several times on the podcast. After 2.5 years focusing on repairing over 900 war-damaged homes in Kharkiv Oblast, their aim now is the purchase and repair of cottages in safer parts of the country to ensure the safe evacuation of families from the east. As she writes, alongside the mass use of glide bombs and artillery, drones are now used to target civilians who continue to attempt to remain in their homes. So this year has seen a huge wave of migration westward, meaning the provision of housing for internally displaced people has taken on a new urgency. In the year before his death, David continually showed us so much support and care, from consistently promoting our work to always checking up on our team when somewhere he knew we may be working was attacked. We are so grateful to him and hope that he will be able to raise money to continue to help the most vulnerable in Ukraine in his memory. Thanks, Ada. And on a personal note, thanks to Phoebe Page for her help facilitating KHARPP being one of the charities at very short notice, and for her support since David's death. The other charity is the British Heart Foundation. As his family write, David loved his career as a journalist. He also loved music, cricket, Warhammer, and Napoleonic history, to name but a few of his passions, and was a kind, funny, and loving son, brother, nephew, cousin, colleague, and friend to many people. Each week, 12 people under the age of 35 die from a heart attack. One of those was David. We wish to honour his memory and raise money for research that might help prevent the death of another young person. The links to both of those charities, as I say, are in the show notes. But now, at last, over to Adélie to explain the first segment for you, a two-parter which starts today and ends on Friday.
Thanks, Francis. And again, to all of you listeners who have sent emails and cards over the last year, thank you very much. It's been very touching to see how loved David was, how he was missed, and that so many people around the world thought about him, not only when he passed away, but also in the months after. Thank you very much. But let's get to the subject of today's episode. You'll all be familiar now with NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. It's one of the bodies at the center of the political drama back in July, when Zelensky passed a law that sapped the independence of this institution, as well as another one, SAPO. It led to dozens and dozens of protests across Ukraine, voices of a new generation that, despite the war, still wanted the government to be accountable. David was very intrigued by NABU, and we'd been working on a special episode dedicated to corruption in Ukraine. Of course, as ever, David was ahead of the curve in identifying NABU as one of the key elements to understand Ukraine as a country today. But this particular piece of reporting came as much from his journalistic intuition as it did from his love of Star Wars. Throughout our trip, he kept on repeating, Naboo, Naboo, Naboo. And I really wish I had a recording of him saying that rather than me, just so you could hear how excited he was. I looked back at our notes preparing the interviews, and I had forgotten that amongst the very serious questions for the director of the Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, he'd also written, "To what extent does the fall of the planet of Naboo show the folly of the policy of non-interventionism?" Or, "Did the Naboo crisis show the weakness of the Jedi as an institution?" All references that were sadly for him lost on me because I have to confess I still have not watched any of the Star Wars movies. The recordings you'll hear in today's episode were carried out at Naboo's head office in Kyiv, where officials describe their work. Later this week, in part 2, you'll hear a more critical perspective on this, at times controversial institution in Ukraine, and more generally on the country's fight against corruption. Much has changed in the 18 months since these interviews were recorded. But we think, in the light of what's happened over the summer, they still provide a valuable record of an important subject in the war, as well as giving you an opportunity to hear more of David and how he worked. We've decided to keep some of the rawest parts of the interview and the reporting, stuff that usually ends up on the cutting room floor, for the pleasure of hearing more of David. And as you'll hear very shortly, things when reporting don't always go quite according to plan.
Well, thank you so much for welcoming us to Naboo. Could you just introduce yourself and tell us about your work here as an organisation? Do you want me to do it again?
Yes, can you please not leave us?
Sorry. Thank you so much for welcoming us here to Naboo. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and the work of this organisation?
Thank you for coming. My name is Polina Lysenko, and I'm a Deputy Director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. NABU is a law enforcement agency which was created in 2015 to fight high-profile corruption. So our jurisdiction is not just regular bad guys. Our jurisdiction are like top officials of this country. Together we work very closely with Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, and they started their work in 2016. While NABU does an investigation, SAPO makes a procedural supervision of our cases. And our cases are submitted to the High Anti-Corruption Court. So this is the specialized court which is responsible for our cases, like NABU's and SAPO's cases. We have in our jurisdiction 14 articles of the Criminal Code where our detectives have responsibility to investigate. These are, roughly saying, bribery, abuse of influence, and other so-called corruption articles or corruption cases. NABU's structure is different from the structure of other law enforcement agencies in Ukraine. So we have detectives, we have analysts who help them to investigate and provide them with analytical work and support. We have SWAT team, and we have operative and technical team, which provides with some operative measures and help our detectives with some things like surveillance or other stuff.
Oh, it's okay. There's just some sound outside.
Sorry?
There's just some sound outside, but it's okay.
Oh, but I didn't pick it up. It's okay. But thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Also, we have 200 state servants, and state servants are accountancy unit, document floor, PR, communications, international unit. So those who support 500 of those who are involved into the investigation. In 2023, we made an optimization of our structure, and that gave us an opportunity to create 20 more vacancies and to fill them with more detectives and to create one unit in Dnipro city, which is the million citizen city in Ukraine. Also, it is worth to be mentioned that in December 2023, Verkhovna Rada, our parliament, voted for the draft, which...
I hear that. Oh, is that... Are they like cutting grass or something?
I don't know. I think that probably they cut trees.
Oh. Oh no.
Oh no, they got beton.
Oh!
You got what?
They're cutting the tarmac
Oh, wow.
on the road.
Oh.
Is there anywhere else
Давайте я наберу зараз.
We tried to wait it out and see if the construction work would eventually stop. But as it didn't, we eventually moved to a quieter room where we picked things up with Polina Lysenko.
About our challenges, we have, I would say, two the most important one. The first one is the creation of independent forensic institution. So investigations of the NABU are divided into two parts. The first one is bribery itself, which is roughly saying easy type of investigations. Like we understand who gives the bribe and we understand who takes the bribe. Our aim is to fix this process. But the second type is the financial investigations. And financial investigations is a very complicated type of investigations because you need to prove money flows, where money were given, where money were taken, which banks are involved, which countries could be involved, and you can prove damages. So let's say for the last point, for proof of damages, you need to have an expertise. And in Ukraine, we have a lot of forensic institutions. So let's say within the Ministry of Justice, within the SBU, which is the State Security Service of Ukraine, within the Ministry of Internal Affairs and other agencies. So when we need our forensic examination to be done, we send a request to these institutions, and average or like approximate time of even sometimes waiting for the feedback from them on do they start or not the forensic examination, it could be like 6 months. So we just wait to be said yes or no, we start or not. Approximate time of forensic examinations, we counted because it's a problematic issue for us, as I said. It's 1-2 years. And the longest was 4 years. So when NABU is required to investigate corruption here and now, we need to wait at least 2 years when we can prove these damages, like according to documents, not just by words, because it's a very high level of standard of proof. That is why words of detectives are not enough. The second huge challenge for NABU is the independent wiretapping. As of now, the only agency in Ukraine can wiretap. It's the Special Security Service of Ukraine, or SBU. According to the legislation, changes were made in 2019 and NABU was provided the right to make an independent wiretapping. But it's just a legal basis for that. But for the technical thing, we need to do some steps together with the SBU to provide us with this thing. The third, I would say, important challenge for us is to keep our independency, including the independency on our jurisdiction. Because jurisdiction for the NABU is one of the pillars of its independency, and NABU's jurisdiction cannot be changed or taken by any other law enforcement agency, and NABU's cases cannot be under the investigation of other law enforcement agency. I think that everyone understands that, and we do hope that NABU will keep its independency, also including the jurisdiction in the future.
You mentioned as your third point the importance of the independence of NABU from other agencies and the government. We've heard a lot about the centralization of power in the Ukrainian government over the war. Is that something that NABU finds concerning? And what do you think the impact would be if NABU did lose its independence?
We don't see such a risk because NABU has been, NABU is, and I hope NABU will, an independent institution. NABU has changed its status a few years ago because of some decisions of the Constitutional Court, which was also sort of the risk for us, and we saw that as a risk for our independence, let's say, because NABU has changed its status. Now we are a central authority within the structure of the central authorities of Ukraine. So roughly saying we're the part of the government system. But even taking this into account, as of now, we have all the needed guarantees for our independency, which help us to stay away from things which you have mentioned. For NABU, it is important to stay as an independent institution because of our reputation. We can't lose it, and we cannot lose the trust of Ukraine citizens, because NABU was created, as I told you, in 2015 after the Revolution of Dignity. Because at that moment, Ukrainian state understands that the situation with corruption cannot be as it was before. That is why NABU is one of the most trusted and most efficient institutions in Ukraine.
You mentioned that 2023 was a hugely successful year for you. Does that mean that there's a lot more corruption that you found, that the war, the full-scale invasion, has generated more corruption that you're discovering? Or is it that with more resources, you're able to do more?
As we always say, corruption in Ukraine exists, as it exists in every state. But our successful 2023 was not because in Ukraine was more corruption. It was because we became more efficient and more successful, because we received more tools, more equipment. We are very much supported by international partners. We have a technical support that helps us to have a very updated and modern tools and equipment, and I think that we will see that a little bit later today. So that helped us to be more efficient. It's not because of the increase of the level of the corruption, because, as I said, corruption exists everywhere. Our main task is to fight against corruption. At NABU, we have the unit of detectives, which is focused on the corruption in the military and in the sphere of renovation of Ukraine. So we understand all the challenges, we understand the situation of war. That is why this unit was before, but after we were provided 300 more people, the quantity of detectives in this unit will be increased, because director understands that the focus should be made on this sphere as well.
Do you think sorry.
Give me time to type.
Sorry. Do you think the government and the military are scared of you, and should they be?
I can answer like that. There are rumors. According to the law, I said that we have 700 people. But according to rumors, we have heard from everywhere. The NABU's quantity of staff is 70,000 people. So that probably shows bad guys are scared of us. But NABU's reputation is so good that bad guys tries to see NABU everywhere, and they're really scared that there are 70,000 NABU's employees. And we never say yes or no on that.
A few more questions before we move on. You mentioned support from international partners. Can I ask what kind of support is that in a bit more detail, and what more do you need from Ukraine's friends to help you do your work?
We have, I would say, two important pillars of our existence: the support of international partners, and the second is the support of the NGOs, or an active part of the Ukrainian society. The first one, we have been supported mostly by the INL, which is the part of the Department of State, the US government, and by the European Union Anti-Corruption Initiative, which is the project funded by the EU. For us, it means that it's clear that budget of Ukraine is limited. That is why budget of the NABU is limited too. But corruptioners, they also develop themselves. They buy the newest equipment. They create tools of committing the crime of corruption. Every day they develop themselves. That is why we cannot use, let's say, tools of the investigations which were used in, let's say, back to 2015. That is why we need to develop ourselves as well. But taking into account that the budget of Ukraine is limited, we do need the support of international partners in the scope of the projects, so-called projects of the technical assistance. That means that with the help of the INL and with the help of the European Union Anti-Corruption Initiative, we have an opportunity to be trained. So let's say a very good example that all the detectives of NABU have gone through the cryptocurrency training. So every detective has that knowledge. So we, with the help of international partners, we can be trained well, equipped well. You will see, as I've mentioned, the criminal lab. Criminal lab was created after our business trips of our analysts to the UK, to the National Crime Agency, and to the FBI. Federal Bureau of Investigation in the US. Our partners provide us with the most modern equipment, licenses, and other very specific things which are very expensive and which cannot be purchased by the state budget. So, 3 things: trainings, equipment, and experience exchange. For us to be better, it means like to see how our partners in the world live.
Finally, are you optimistic for the future?
Well, as every Ukrainian now, I'm scared for the future. I'm scared for the future of our children, of my children, but I'm optimistic. We now understand that the support of our international partners, the UK, the US, France, Germany, is crucial for our existence. And we understand that. Everyone understands that. But also we understand that even now, when the war is not over, or in the future, when the war is over, I hope with our victory, we cannot live in the country full of corruption or just a country where the corruption exists. Because we understand that we fight for our better future. And our best men and women are dying for Ukraine, and corruption cannot exist in Ukraine after the victory of Ukraine.
Thank you.
Then, Polina Lysenko showed us into a very small room where 3 people stood amongst piles and piles and piles of papers and files.
So you can see how it looks.
There are boxes and boxes of documents lining the walls, bags and bags on the floor, all labelled with the badge of the Anti-Corruption Agency of NABU.
These are materials of the case, and it was public, about the procurement of food for Ministry of Defense. And detectives made a seizure of these documents, and they made a seizure of documents of more than 600 military bases. And here you can see these documents. And now these professional detectives need to analyze them. And for that, we also need a forensic examination to be made. And again, we are back to the question we were discussing about the need of creation of independent forensic institution, because we need to send that for the forensic examination and wait, we don't know for how much time, these examinations to be made.
This was such a high-profile case. Could you tell us a little bit more about it and what kind of documents are actually here? What are we looking at?
I would like to ask a detective here. Це був відомий великий кейс. Ви можете трошки більше розказати в межі того, що ми можемо розказати про цей кримінальний кейс публічно, щоб це не зашкодило розслідуванню?
Зараз я поки що не можу багато розповісти.
Detective says that he cannot say much about this case now because it's under the investigation, so it's an investigative secrecy. But now what we can tell that we are collecting evidences and documents on the request of the expert who will make this examination for the NABU, and now we are at the stage of collecting all these documents, systemizing them, and providing for the expertise.
Can we ask, and maybe the answer is no, but how cooperative are some of the bases? Is there a big range?
Можемо спитати, можливо, ні. Наскільки кооперуються, наскільки йдуть на співпрацю ці військові частини?
Ну, поки що, мабуть, я утримуюсь від коментаря. Це...
I don't want to go in further details, but I can say that in the most of cases, military bases are ready to cooperate.
Не мій кабінет, але зазвичай так...
My question to detective was, is it okay for you? Do you have enough space, even like comfortable space for work and to sit here? Because we can see detective here and 2 more students who help him. And the answer is for sure no. His office is a different one, but he comes back and forth from his office to this office. 1 building is not enough. Even such circumstances we have, even not having this plus 300 people more. So when we will have plus 100 this year, in fact, we are working on the question how to move and whom to create at least some working environment to these people.
How long are the interns here and what do they study? Do we know?
They are lawyers, 4th level of studying. It's last year of bachelor's degree. And we have an agreements with more than 21 universities. And that helps us a lot because, again, we don't have many people, just 700 people, but we need a lot of technical work, and it's very unfair for the very professional, trained detective to do such a technical thing, like to copy documents, to write numbers of pages, because his work is to investigate. That is why we're very grateful for students, for their help to our detectives.
How old are they?
I expect like 20, 21.
Wow. And can we ask the detective's name as well?
Sergei.
Sergei.
Detective Sergei.
Detective Sergei. How old are you, Sergei?
Що? 32.
32. And
Same.
I should say that the average age of NABU's employees is, I would say, young. I'm 31. Detectives are like 32, 35. Some of us like 40. But for the law enforcement community, it's a very young age.
Thank you very much, Jaku.
Thank you.
Can we ask them, with such a low average age, you're 31, you said the students in there are 21, do you feel to some extent that what you're fighting against when it comes to corruption is almost an age thing? Like are the people who are usually corrupt older, sort of post-Soviet mentality, or is that, how do you see it? Like, is this the young Ukraine trying to claim a brighter future against people who grew up in the Soviet Union, who are used to how business is done back then?
I would say it depends. I think that like 70-80% of those who committed corruption, they are like older generation. But we can see like bad guys among the youth, and that's a very bad thing. I don't know what's the reason. A lack of education, a wish to live a very luxurious life. I can say for sure that the most of us, I mean like the young generation, even young generation of state servants, we have right education, right understanding, and we have gone through few revolutions, including revolution of dignity. And that is why it doesn't allow us, I mean like morally and mentally, to do such terrible things like corruption. Добрий день.
Do you want to ask you a question about the journalist thing? Because I don't know quite how to phrase it.
Gender thing?
No. Journalists.
Say about gender.
Do you have things to say about gender? Because I'm happy to hear that.
Yes, I would like to say about gender. We don't have a lot of women, and we work on the women's leadership. Among all the NABU's employees, we have like 1/7 women, and just 1/10 of detectives are women. And it's not enough. And a small percentage are on the leadership position. That is why we try to create a new, like a healthy environment for women. And even now we have been working on the communication strategy for the recruiting of new detectives. And we also would like to focus our strategy on particular categories of citizens, including military people, or like who are demobilized, and women.
I have a question about the journalists. Ooh, actually, can I ask it here? Because the sound is very echoey here. So, in the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of corruption investigations in the journalism realm being spied on or followed or listened on by SBU. How do you collaborate with investigative journalists? And the fact that this happened, how does that make you feel about the fight against corruption more generally within other state agencies?
I would say that any pressure to journalists or to any other representatives of society is impossible and is the facts which couldn't exist in Ukraine. Everyone saw this case. It didn't, I would say, influence on our fight against corruption and on our cooperation with investigative journalists. And information from investigation journalists is one of the sources from where we get our information also. For us, we hope that this case will be investigated by the relevant authorities, and if that was an illegal act, those who are involved should be responsible for that.
Are you worried about being spied on by SBU?
No. We are not worried to be spied by the SBU. I do hope that, in particular nowadays, law enforcement agencies, governmental agencies should cooperate, because we need one enemy, is Russia Federation, and we need to do whatever we can to fight against Russia, but not against ourselves. This is Detective Ruslan. Ruslan.
Nice to meet you.
Ruslan is not just a good detective, but a very good feature of him that he has been working at the NABU since 2015. And you remember I told you that in 2023 we made an optimization of the structure and we created a new unit in Dnipro. So Ruslan is the head of the unit of detectives in Dnipro.
Can you tell us about your time in Dnipro? What are you finding?
Yep, I understand what you say. Now we're starting our department organize. Так, ми тільки стартували нашу роботу в Дніпрі і наразі ми тільки розпочинаємо.
We just started our work at Dnipro and we have been organizing our environment there. We have just received the building and we think that in 1 month's period of time from now we will be done all the renovations and we will be ready to sit there and work.
Ну, ми вже розпочали певну присутність в регіоні, вже реалізації по
But we have already started our like regional work there, and we have already had a few criminal cases, and NABU is well known in this region as well.
Do you have a sense yet of how corruption may be different in Dnipro than Kyiv?
Yep. До сьогодні не було присутніми в Дніпрі, тому
We chose Dnipro as the city where we opened our unit we created because of the fact that the front line is very near to the Dnipro city and corruption there became more not controlled. So that is why to show our presence there and to stop some corruption schemes, we decided to open our unit exactly in Dnipro.
Yes. We have some questions. Thank you very much. Catch me.
Good luck.
By the way, Ruslan was one of 5 NABU's representatives who spent some time in the US, and he was trained. Yes, so he is a trainer in the virtual shooting range.
What does that mean?
That means that all the NABU's detectives, they should carry a gun. And we don't have a real shoot range. That is why the US partners, they bought for us the Virtra, which is a virtual shooting range.
It's very cool shooting range. You use guns with special automatic kit. When you shoot in shooting range, in this virtual shooting range, like real, when you shoot, all automatics work correctly, like it in normal shooting range. You feel all
the sensation.
Yes, all the sensation working with guns.
Is it virtual because you have like VR? Like
No. It's a projector panel. Yes.
Screens.
Yes, screens. 180 degrees. They simulate real life of policemen and the shooting range.
If all NABU agents carry a weapon, have you ever had to use it in any situations?
For example, 2 weeks before, we use guns when he follows the man who take bribery, and he follow him, and he don't stop, and he stops his car, yes, with his Glock.
And finally, we sat down with Semen Krivonos, the director of NABU. Just like his deputy Polina Lysenko, he still holds his job to this day, despite the agitation over the summer.
Briefly, would you just introduce yourself and your role here at NABU?
My name is Semen Krivonos. I'm NABU's director.
Do you feel like you're in an arms race with corrupt people in Ukraine, that they're developing tools and you're constantly having to work to find them out, to discover them? Could you tell us about that? What problems do you see? What challenges do you see for your agency?
Ukraine shown huge results in well-known rank of countries with level of corruption, and we achieved huge results in this sphere, and especially after we shown that we are ready to combat corruption. First of all, we detained the head of Supreme Court. We gave a notice of suspicious to 3 deputies of ministers. We detained mostly 50 persons, different heads of different institutions. What is important that our challenges, first of all, it's a full-scale invasion, because we should win in this war. and it depends from financial aid and military aid of our partners. Second, we have a limited staff if we're talking about National Anti-Corruption Bureau, but Parliament voted and changed our legislation and increased number of our staff from 700 persons to 1,000 persons, and we will be more effective in this year because we will hire new people in 2024 and in 2025. We need to receive full access to all resources what we need. We should be mostly independent agency. So during 2024 we will ask our partners to help us to advocate legislative changes and create a forensic institution and full access to independence wiretapping of mobile phones.
10 years ago, the Revolution of Dignity, the wildly corrupt Yanukovych was thrown out, overthrown. That was only 10 years ago. In 10 years' time, where do you want Ukraine to be?
One of the most successful country in European Union as a member of European Union and the civilized world.
Adélie, any questions?
Yes. Do you want me to ask?
Please.
I'll ask, but do you want to repeat them on mic so that it can be included in your interview?
Sure.
So you've talked about the important role of NABU in the war effort and that new unit that you have. You've talked about procurement, clothes, food. Can you tell us a bit more about who's benefiting from corruption and therefore who's kind of benefiting from the war in a way that shouldn't be?
Regarding our investigations, different persons. It can be high-ranking officials, it can be organized crime groups, it can be internal organized crime groups, even international organized crime groups. It depends from one case to other case. It can be officials, it can be public servants. We investigated cases abusing power, embezzlement funds, bribes regarding public servants first of all. So when we start to investigate something, first what we see, it's a public servants, because it's our just like responsibility as National Anti-Corruption Bureau, because we should to combat corruption in public sphere, in public service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Can you tell us where we are now and what we're looking at?
So you are in the premises of the Digital Forensic Laboratory of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, the division that is entirely devoted to the electronic evidence examination. So the staff of the lab consists of engineers in the field of informational technologies, and we deliver all kinds of services for case agents who investigate criminal cases.
From a British perspective, how did the NCA help you? What support did they give?
The National Crime Agency assisted us in many things, and this lab was partially established thanks to the donations of the National Crime Agency. So this covers equipment, software, and also renewals of software, because without this opportunity we couldn't even use software that was bought previously.
Can you tell us what kind of cases you're looking at? What do you do in your day-to-day job?
We are a division that provide assistance, so we are not leading person in the criminal case investigation. We are often on everyday basis asked from the case agents to assist them in examination of some particular media or device. And the main question is what data is inside this device. Often these devices are locked or encrypted, and we need to apply techniques to unlock or decrypt the data to see what's going on there. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau usually targets the most higher government persons, or the persons that are suspected in the stealing or embezzlement of huge amounts of money. So every finding in our unit goes, probably can be an evidence in court of law. Even hard to choose some case to tell you about.
You must be really proud of your agents and what you do.
Yeah, it's really an honor to work here and to be head of this unit, but without people who work here, all the achievement couldn't be achieved.
Final question. What more can your international partners, maybe the FBI and the NCA, what more can they do to help you?
Bureau is expanding now and will hire more people to the lab. Each forensic examiner as a person who can potentially conduct forensic examination need a separate working place, separate equipment and software, and also the support of his workplace. We will face this issue, and if we couldn't find money in the budget, we will probably go to ask for donations in this case.
From Adélie? Anything we haven't spoken about that you'd like to mention?
Thank you for assistance of all partners that assist to the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and to the people of Ukraine in the fight against Russian invasion.
Thank you very much, Andrzej. Just to be clear, the things that are on these screens that we can see, that's data from, I mean, I can't see it, I'm not wearing my glasses, but that might be data from phones or from emails, and you are very carefully making sure that you can store that for the future.
Yeah, you're right.
Adélie, do you think we could record some of the sounds of the data?
Yeah, and also could you explain what this is, for example? But this looks...
Yeah,
this has got...
radio frequency enclosure, so-called Faraday box. It prevents getting radio signals into the phone, so we can eliminate getting a kill signal to, for example, iPhone, if we want to switch on the phone that is switched off.
So just in front of us is a small cabinet, a small box with an opening lid that Andrzej is showing us. There are a pair of gloves, and you can put your hands through the gloves. You close the box like that, and then you can see through this, the phone.
Yeah.
You put your hands through the gloves into the box, almost like you're sort of operating radioactive material. Like,
No, it's not a radio.
No, but it looks a bit like...
Yeah.
There's and then this box stops, as Andrzej said, stops any signal coming to the iPhone to say, I don't know, lost, erase, wipe it,
right.
so you can look at what's happening.
We can evaluate. Can we put it from the box to work openly? Or do we need to work inside the box?
You're smiling a lot when looking at this. Is this one of the more exciting parts of your job?
It's always a risky part of the job, and nobody should distract the examiner from doing this.
Wow, I've never seen one of these before. Adélie, any questions?
No, I don't think so. I'll just record some more bit.
Thank you very much for showing us your tools.
You're welcome.
Let's go to our final thoughts now. And Dom, where would you like to leave listeners today?
Well, thanks, Francis. Just a very quick addition to that, really. I've obviously been thinking about David every day since we lost him a year ago. I was late to the pod today, and in slightly chaotic fashion, because I'm here at the Ukraine Freedom Summit in London. I've just moderated one panel, going to be doing another one later. And I think that's where David would have liked me to be, even though it meant I was late joining today and slightly shabby around the edges. But that's what we've done. That's what he set up, and that's what we've continued to do. We've gone to where the people are, where the news is, where the opinions are formed. We've tried to inform, educate, where appropriate, amuse, to keep the interest. And that's why I'm speaking to you from a slightly echoey room here today, but it is exactly as David would have wanted, I believe, what he set up, the whole ethos of this podcast. So I think he's with us today, probably swearing, as he did occasionally, face of an angel, voice of a toilet U-bend. But anyway, he would be delighted that we're still out and about doing our thing and trying to do what we can to help and support the noble people of Ukraine. So I'll be thinking about David again today, as I always do, but with special poignancy.
Ukraine the Latest is an original podcast from The Telegraph, created by David Knowles. To support our work and stay on top of all of our Ukraine news, analysis and dispatches from the ground, please subscribe to The Telegraph. You can get 1 month free, then 2 months for just £1 at www.telegraph.co.uk/Ukraine the Latest. Deploying cutting-edge technology, we also release Ukrainian and Russian versions of this podcast. These translations retain our voices and delivery so that it can reach listeners in every region of Ukraine and those parts of Eastern Europe where Russian is still widely spoken. Links to those can be found in the podcast description to this episode. You can also now sign up to the new Ukraine the Latest weekly newsletter. Each week, Dom Nicholls and I answer your questions, provide recommended reading, and give exclusive analysis and behind-the-scenes insights, plus maps of the front lines and diagrams of weapons to complement our daily reporting. It's free for everyone, including non-subscribers. You can find the link to sign up in the descriptions for this episode. We regularly have a Ukraine Live blog on our website, where you can follow updates as they come in throughout the day, including insights from regular contributors to this podcast. We also do the same for other breaking international stories. If you appreciate our work, please consider following Ukraine the Latest on your preferred podcast app and leave us a review, as it really helps others find the show. Please also share it with those who may not be aware we exist. You can listen to this conversation live at 1 p.m. London time each weekday on X Spaces. Follow The Telegraph so that you don't miss it. You can also get in touch directly to ask questions or give comments by emailing ukrainepod@telegraph.co.uk. We continue to read every message. You can also contact us directly on X. You'll find our handles in the description for this episode. As ever, we're especially interested to hear where you're listening from around the world. Ukraine the Latest was today produced by Rachel Porter. Executive producers are Francis Dearnley, Louisa Wells, and David Knowles.
My name is David Knowles. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye.